Damn, this show is so good. Kind of wish I'd watched it when it came out and reviewed it then.
What's up, guys? Mason the Brock Henderson here, and this is Bones, Season 11, Episode 21, The Jewel in the Crown.
On second thought, maybe it's better that I didn't. What's up, guys? Mason the Brock Henderson here, and this is Stranger Things, Season 1, Episode 5, The Flea and the Acrobat. So right now, I think my favorite thing about the show is how everything is really converging together. As I talked about before, how I really enjoy the stories where people are getting different pieces of the puzzle, and then they all come together and they start to share those pieces of information and they can piece it all together. And so in this one, we do see Hopper finally go to Joyce with the information he's discovered, and there's something so cathartic about that, especially because of everything Joyce goes through in this episode, having to deal with Lonnie coming back, which I will say, I didn't say this in the last review. I had a suspicion that he had come back because maybe he was somehow connected to the whatever government thing that is searching for 11 and all of this. I had a suspicion that's why he came back, is because he's somehow wrapped up in all of this. But to find out that he's just come back because he saw an opportunity to make some money, yeah, that sounds a bit more right for his type of character. But like I said, I mean, after everything Joyce has been through, to have Hopper show up, and first of all, just talking about Hopper, he's my favorite character right now. He manages to work his way into this facility, takes the key card off of a guard, makes his way to this lab where they've got the gateway up on the wall, and then they manage to capture him, knock him out, put him back on his couch, and it seems like they set it up to make him feel like maybe he had just hallucinated all of it because there are pills on the table, there's drinks on the table. But I love that he gets up and with no hesitation starts unscrewing light bulbs, starts opening up couch cushions. Just within a few seconds, that's instantly where his mind goes. And honestly, I kind of want to know a little bit more about what he did before he was a cop, because it feels like he's had training for his mind to think this way, to think, I need to search for a bug, and to know all of the places to search as well. It's really impressive. So I don't know if that comes from something we don't know about from him yet. Maybe he did work in the government as a CIA agent or something like that. Damn, is he smart. And it's also hilarious when he shows up at Joyce's place and sees all of the lights. It's just the look on his face. Well, why don't you just take it outside so that way you don't have to, oh, nope, okay, they're unscrewing all of the light bulbs. Alrighty. Well, Hopper, you are certainly dedicated, and I kind of love him for it. But yeah, it's so cathartic because Joyce, that moment whenever she hears that she's been right about Will not being Will and all of this, is such a good feeling. And it's why I love these types of stories where characters get that information that they were missing or they were lacking. It's always so satisfying whenever it's done well. And on that same note, we do see the kids trying to find the gateway that is out here seemingly in the woods. I still don't know exactly how it works because it seems like Will and Barb were both just teleported to this other world, the Upside Down. So I don't know if the gateways appear just in random spots, but we see in this one for Nancy, she actually finds a gateway that's inside of a tree, but then the tree starts to close after she's gone through and Jonathan's looking for her, which it was a little weird that he didn't just look down to his left near where her bag and bat were. The hole was right there. He's just looking everywhere else except for that one place. But yeah, so I'm still a little confused as far as how the gateways work. Do they just show up everywhere, or are they in one specific spot? Are they connected to the creature and that's why they open up in different places? So there are still a lot of questions here, but I like the fact that we're seeing the kids and Jonathan and Nancy both deciding to head out and try to solve this on their own. And while I don't think they're in the same area, because it seems like 11 was trying to lead the boys away, mostly to protect him, and I'll talk about that more so in a second, but it does make me feel like they might end up grouping up, like the boys with Jonathan and Nancy, if they can manage to get her out of there. But some of the conversations between Jonathan and Nancy in this one I thought were better. They both called each other out for Jonathan's creepiness and Nancy sort of overlooking the fact that Steve's kind of an asshole. I don't know if they're trying to set up for a romance here or not. It kind of feels like they are, just based on some of the scenes that have come before and then this. I almost half expected Steve to show up and get all jealous that she decided to go hang out with Jonathan instead of him. But whether or not they decide to turn this into a romance, I do like these scenes between the two of them, because it shows that both of them are sort of putting up fronts. For Nancy, she wants to believe this thing between her and Steve is not just what happened with her mom and dad. Whereas for Jonathan, I think he wants to believe that everybody else are the jerks and he's just trying to stay away from them. But in doing so, he's become a jerk himself. So I like how that sort of got pointed out in this episode. And I also do appreciate the fact, because there was a part of me that was questioning, well, why doesn't Jonathan go talk to his mom? But he does point out that with everything she's going through at the moment, even though he could tell her, hey, I believe you now about that creature you saw, what is that going to accomplish? I mean, outside of the fact that it would be letting her know that he doesn't think she's crazy, which I do think would have been nice. Him confirming that what she saw is real isn't the same as what she got at the end of this episode, which is Hopper telling her that Will is actually alive. So I do respect that decision, and I think it does make sense why he wouldn't. But as far as the boys in 11 are concerned, I will say in this episode, obviously this is the group kind of splitting up a little bit because Lucas, in my opinion, takes it a little too far. Because I said before how I like the dynamic of having Mike, who is fully invested, believes 11 on everything, Lucas, who's very skeptical, and then Dustin, who's kind of there for the ride. The thing about that dynamic that makes it work is you've got everybody with their different sides of the argument, and so it kind of balances itself out. But then in this episode, it does get to a point where Lucas's skepticism takes him a little too far, to the point where now he's accusing 11 of all of this stuff that she's not guilty of. And granted, some of it does make sense why his mind would go there. Also the fact that they're kids, so it does make sense that their minds would exaggerate a lot of details. But ultimately, unfortunately, what it does is it makes Lucas look pretty unlikable, because while obviously he doesn't have the backstory to 11 that we've seen with some of the experiments she's gone through, it still is a huge leap in logic to go from she's leading us away from the gate, she even said it's not safe, to saying she's a traitor, she's the monster that's out here making everybody disappear, she's the reason Will's gone. To me, that's a big leap in logic that I don't feel like it makes sense or is reasonable, and it makes Lucas unlikable in that moment. Now, that being said, obviously 11's reaction, throwing him away, knocking him out, that does lend some credence to what he's saying, but that happens after he's already accused her of all this stuff that he really shouldn't have come to the conclusion of. But that's just my own personal opinion. Maybe if I were in the situation, it would be very different. And again, he's young, so it kind of makes sense that he would be making more leaps in logic than somebody who is a bit older, a bit more experienced probably would. But the final thing to talk about is 11 and these flashbacks that we got in this episode. So based on the water tank scene where she's listening in on this Russian conversation, it does lead me to believe that whatever this creature is, the government people did not seem to know about it. It feels like whatever 11's powers are and however she uses them, it almost feels like she taps into this other world and the monsters are just there. They just exist in that world. At least based on how it's presented here. Because it feels like she'd been using her powers for a while, but this was the most powerful use of them. Having to listen in on a conversation seemingly thousands of miles away, that might be to the point where she sort of draws these creatures in while she's using this power. And that's what led to this portal being inside this lab and maybe even the monster getting out into the real world. But I think these flashbacks are very effective though, because we're getting little glimpses. We're getting more pieces of information with each one, and they all do connect with what's happening. So it's something that's really well done and contributes to a really good episode, and still enjoying it, still having a great time. But we will move on to the next episode. So I'll see you guys there in just a second. And now episode 6, The Monster. So this episode had some really good moments and also had some moments that I was not as much of a fan of, but I think it's more personal preference than anything. Because yeah, the high school drama, not really my thing. I said in the last episode, I kind of expected to see Steve try to go after Nancy and then see that she and Jonathan were out in the woods together and get all jealous. That didn't happen. But it also did happen, because he didn't go out and see them in the woods, he saw them in her bedroom, which does justify the jealousy a little bit more than it would have been if he just saw them searching out in the woods. But it still does lead to just that stupid teen drama that I'm not a fan of. Steve retaliates by he and his friend painting that she's a slut all over town. She tries to go talk to him about it. Of course, he doesn't want to listen. He's being a jerk about it. So then Nancy and Jonathan try to leave, but then Steve's a jerk to Jonathan, talks about his family, which then causes Jonathan to snap and start beating the shit out of him. And it's all of this stuff that feels unnecessary, and it's stuff that's not really that interesting. I will say there was one really stupid line, which to me objectively just doesn't make sense. And it's from this random woman in the police station. But she's talking about, oh, did you and your boyfriend have plans? Nancy's like, well, he's not my boyfriend. Well, you need to tell him that, because only love makes you do crazy stuff like this. And what doesn't make sense to me about that is, first of all, this lady doesn't know the situation. She just heard that 2 boys were fighting and that there was a girl involved, so she's assuming. But the problem is we, the audience, we know what it was that set him off and caused him to go that crazy to start beating the shit out of Steve. He was trash-talking his family, his mom and his brother, who he very obviously cares about. So she's right. And that love is what made him do that crazy stuff. But there's no reason why Nancy should think, oh, he loves me? but that's clearly what her reaction is that she thinks he did that because of her. But like I said, a lot of that story is just not really stuff that I'm interested in. Everything else, though, find very interesting. We see Joyce and Hopper going to talk to this lady who lost her daughter. We see the kids going and trying to find more information. I'll say even the kids' drama, because it's similar to the teen drama, but I still find that more interesting because it's more simplistic. The scenes with Dustin calling out both Mike and Lucas, I thought were very well done and kind of hilarious because he's just telling it how it is. I love the line where Mike's trying to say it was Lucas's fault and then Dustin points out that it was kind of everybody's fault except for him. He was the only one that was being chill. There's something kind of funny about that because he's right. Again, I said it in the last episode. I thought Lucas was in the wrong for how he blew up on 11 for no reason and assumed all this stuff out of nowhere. But then as Dustin pointed out, Mike's reaction was over the top and then 11's reaction was over the top. So they were all in the wrong in that scenario. And I like the fact that he just says it how it is. Even whenever 11 shows up and saves Mike and then scares the bullies away, him shouting after him, "Yeah, don't come back or else she'll kill you." Something really funny about that. But like I said, it's very simplistic with their friendship, and there's something charming about that. Like when Dustin's talking about their code where whoever drew first blood has to be the one to offer a handshake first. It's such kid logic, and I kind of love that for it. So the writing for these kids, outside of the fact that they talk about all of this interdimensional stuff, which is probably stuff that's way outside of how their brains should be thinking, scientifically speaking, but they also are into D&D and they seem to read comic books as well, so there's a chance they could be using that world as sort of the basis of their knowledge. And it just so happens that those worlds do coincide with what is actually happening, but more so just how they talk to each other, how they are with each other. I feel like a lot of that is very well written, and it feels like whoever the writing team is, they understand the way that kids' brains work, and I really appreciate them for that. But as far as the stuff with Hopper and Joyce, I mean, all of that was just really good. I've already talked about how interesting I find Hopper's journey through all of this, and this was just another step on the journey. I will say this does seem to confirm, though, that whatever this experiment was before, tapping into this other world, this upside down, I don't think that was part of the initial experiment. I think it's something that sort of happened, and then Brenner and his team decided, well, let's push this boundary and see how far we can take this. You know, whatever creature was lurking in this other world that she puts her mind into, let's see if we can make contact and see what this world's about. And we do see the consequence of that because, as 11 says at the end, she's the one that opened the gate. So I will say I am becoming more and more interested in Brenner and his team and what they're trying to accomplish. With 2 episodes left, I don't know if we're going to find out much more about that. It feels like the story is probably going to be more so focused on trying to get Will back. We might get a few answers in the process, but I don't think we're going to really delve into the truth of that world and either why it exists or how it works. But I do think we at least did get some answers about what these experiments were at the beginning, because we saw, I think the lady's name Terry, or her last name was Terry. Her sister was talking about what they were doing with her, trying to expand the mind. So it seems like that's what the experiments were about. And then in doing so, they didn't realize she was pregnant. And those experiments seem to have affected the baby, which is what brought about 11. But I think we're seeing with a lot of these flashbacks and the one scene with 11 and the Russian guy, I think we're seeing why these experiments were being run. They're probably just a part of that information war, because I want to say this was around the end of the Cold War. I'm not really a history buff, so somebody will have to help me with my dates on that. But I do know that the Cold War was kind of around the time when the information war started. It was more about knowing what your enemies knew. That seems like what they wanted 11 to be able to do was to go spy on the Russians for them. So I do think this is perfectly poised going into the final 2 episodes of this season. I don't know if season 1 ends on a cliffhanger or not, but I assume the main focus, the climax and the resolution for this season is going to be getting Will back, because that's what a lot of this season has been building towards. I'm not so sure that Barb's going to be coming back, because it does feel like the Demogorgon did get her, whereas Will has been shown that he's actually still alive in this other world. But I guess we'll see what happens. But with all that being said, let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. What were your thoughts on these 2 episodes? Let me know. We can talk about and discuss all the good stuff. Leave a like and subscribe for future Stranger Things reviews. Also check out the channel. We have a lot of other reviews on here, so check those out if you have time. But until next time, I hope you guys have a great day. And I will talk to y'all later. Peace out.